Welcome to In the Skies of Love, a critical review podcast about the anime series Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I'm Kamel, a newcomer to this revered series and your companion on this adventure. Joining me are Tom and Joel, two diehard fans of the show. Each week, we'll review and analyze an episode exploring its characters, plot, and themes, and asking new characters. Fuck me.
Let's take it from the top, guys.
We really should re-record this.
Kamel, buddy, what's going on?
I was doing so well. Welcome to In the Skies of Love, a critical review podcast about the anime series Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I'm Kamel, a newcomer to this revered series and your companion on this adventure. Joining me are Tom and Joel, two diehard fans of the show. Each week we'll review and analyze an episode exploring its characters, plot, and themes, and asking you questions about this influential TV show. So please join us on our journey through the skies of love.
I could feel every blood vessel in your forehead there as you were.
I still tripped over a word there as well.
Seamlessly did it in one take with no mistakes.
If people sign up to the Patreon, then we'll do the intro properly.
Yeah, but only for those people, not for everyone else. Everyone else gets
sign up to the Patreon now. You get access to episodes where we don't fumble our intro or fumble the introduction to the episode.
Yeah, which was better? I mean, I think when we read it out every week, that's new content. That's good new content. Maybe non-Patreon people should get the pre-recorded same intro every time.
Oh, they should get the soundboard. Yeah.
Yeah, the Patreon reward is the blooper intros every time.
It should be like an assembled cut of me saying each word separately.
I'd like
no
to
mistakes.
Overlay them like a chorus. Like every word is a chorus of Kamel saying each word.
Every word from the intro as a single sound all at once.
And then I can play it on one of those like macro pads. You know how like electronic musicians do.
Yeah.
Like Sean Wasabi. Yeah.
Sure. If you say so. And then I could learn to play it. Play the intro.
Congratulations, you played yourself. We end the podcast there.
That's a terrible joke.
Okay.
It's the first DJ Khaled quote of the show.
Yeah.
That's surprising, isn't it? Like seven episodes in.
Yeah.
I did think about him a couple times watching this.
Specifically one of these or both of these episodes, or previous episodes, or just you stopped paying attention to the show to think about DJ Khaled for there because you were.
Yeah.
What's he up to? I wonder what he's up to right now.
It was definitely during this first of the two episodes we'll be discussing, which is episode 14 of the show, which is entitled...
It's titled The Liberation of the Frontier Zone.
Catchy.
I forgot to copy and paste that to the document. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah. I'll do the intro. Liberation of the Frontier Zone. Open parentheses. Episode. Close parentheses. The Free Planets Alliance expeditionary fleet has conquered more than 200 star zones with over 50 million inhabitants without engaging in combat. In Isilon Fortress, Vice Admiral Alex Kazern, or Kazelnu, depending on your subs, drafts a supply plan. But he is worried that such a heavy burden worried about such a heavy burden. In his opinion, Reinhardt von Lohengram clearly wants the Free Planets Alliance to exhaust its resources on behalf of the liberated planets. The supply fleet is destroyed by Siegfried Kirkjeis because Andrew Falk did not consider the possibility of such an attack. Yang Wenli, fearing the scorched earth policy, convinces his fellow fleet commanders to ask for a withdrawal. Riots break out on many planets because of food shortages and the looting of the soldiers. Falk experiences a case of hysterical blindness after being rebuked by the 5th Fleet Commander Alexandra Bucock. In Fazan, Adrian Rubinsky grants a new loan to the Free Planets Alliance to maintain the balance. He hopes to control both the Empire and the Alliance financially. 10th of October, 796 UC, Reinhardt orders to launch the counterattack. First thoughts on the episode, Kamal? Besides, Another one.
Another episode.
I was making a DJ Khaled reference.
I thought this episode was quite chaotic. It jumped around a lot. There was bits in the capital in Heinesen. There was bits on this planet that we've never been to before with the new story. Like the I don't know if it was the last episode or the one before. I think it was the last episode, which centered on a kind of random planet, and we had the story of this that was just set on the planet for one episode with a kind of love arc and everything. But it kind of dominates the whole episode. It jumps a little bit to other places, but not very much. Whereas this one, it tries to do that, but also jumps to the capital. It jumps to various people's starships, and it jumps back to like the Imperial capital, I think, at one point.
We move up and down the chain of command very quickly, right? Like orders come from the ground, and we watch it like ascend through the ranks, and then we watch that order like come back down through the ranks. So it is jumping around a lot. That's true.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Then that kind of makes sense.
It tries to focus in right on this microcosm of this one planet where the Alliance have arrived, and use that to represent what's happening on like 10 different planets of where the Alliance have come to, and then they're like, we got no food, we'll give you food, and then we have no food to give you, and they focus in on the story of this one, the I forget his name, the ensign, the who classic story, soldier
Franz.
arrives. Yeah, Franz. Classic story of him arriving, falling in love with the town leader's daughter, who he deliberately gives up his daughter for, so that everyone can get food. Which isn't implicit; it's explicit. He says it. At one point, which feels like a retread of the story they were telling last episode or the episode before. Same kind of story.
I completely agree. It felt to me like this was already kind of worn ground at this point. We had already explored a story like this. It also doesn't do anything to mirror it or to like expand upon it in any way. It's just a different telling of a very similar story.
I feel like they could have merged them or like wrapped them into the same plot. I remember when we were talking last week that Joel and I had incorrectly remembered that, not remembered that this episode was a continuation of the last episode, because the stories are quite similar with this planet and this, falling in love with the chief's daughter or whatever. And I feel like they could have been the same story. They might as well have blended them together, and they would have not had to have done so much building of the setting when clearly there was a lot of other things going on in the episode, because it seemed like they were running out of time by the end.
Well, the pacing of this episode, I think, is quite whack. It's pretty bad. And I think that the last episode and this episode could have been trimmed down, combined into a single extremely strong episode. Because we would have had the soldiers on the ground having to deal with the riots, while we're dealing with the nobility discussing their sort of gracious step down from their position, rather than having each story play out independently in quite a stunted and confused way. I think this episode has some really great moments, but it did feel to me the pacing was kind of all over the place. And this ascending and descending the chain of command and pulling, because clearly they want to focus on this small story on this planet. They want to have their cake and eat it, right? Like have the small story on the planet, but also draw back to the larger conflict. And neither of these approaches end up working for me.
I think there's just some really poor craftsmanship in terms of the writing. After the ensign sees what's happening with the food supply, he goes to his admiral, Haywood or whoever it is, and is like, this food's not going to last. This is the plan. We need this amount of food, however many millions of tons of grain or whatever. And he's explaining it. It's all exposition, explaining what the plan is. Mm-hmm. And the admiral goes, "Of course I know what the plan is. I wrote the plan. You don't need to tell me what the plan is."
Yeah.
And it's like, so what? Who's the scene for? Why? Like, it's for us. But it's just so. It feels so lazy.
But we already know. We already know that the Alliance fleet is at breaking point with regards to food. Like we see that as the episode progresses. So I agree. There's all these pointless scenes in office rooms where people are just repeating information that we already have. And the really confusing thing to me is like the time compression seems kind of all over the place. Like there's the instruction to send the fleet to relieve, the Alliance fleet and bring all this additional food. Then suddenly the Alliance fleet is moving. Then Kirky Ice is sent to destroy it, and then it's destroyed. And presumably we rush through what must be like a month of time in the space of about 6 seconds. And it feels very confusing as a viewer to keep up with how much time has passed or how much time hasn't passed. Very weirdly paced episode.
Yeah, follow the timing, because after he gets the ensign gets these kind of instructions, or they're coming up with this plan, then they start talking about how he knows about botany and engineering or something.
Yep.
And he goes out onto the planet, which is kind of a barren wasteland at this point. Like everything's been, taken or whatever.
It's like bargain basement Arrakis.
Yeah, right. And they start lying out irrigation, pipes and drilling for water and stuff, and they find it, and it's all really good. And then in the next scene, there's grass growing, and then I was confused about the show doesn't really explain any of its technology very frequently, or in much detail. But it was one of these times where it's like, how does this how does this work? Is this some sci-fi? Is this technology that they have to work out how to grow food this quickly, or are we watching a long period of time, and the growing of the crops is supposed to signify that passage of time? I wasn't sure which way around it was. It didn't really feel like a lot of time had passed.
So this was distracting me the entire episode, because we saw the farm, like the fields go up, and I was like, oh, maybe it's like a science fiction plant where it's going to it's going to grow within like a week or something. It's a big empire. They got to feed everyone. But then later on, with the fleet moving, and then Kirky Ice getting the instruction to destroy the supply lines, you're like, well, then maybe more time has passed. And the whole way through the episode, I was like asking myself, how long have they been on this planet, and how long has this story taken? There doesn't seem to be any communication at any point about that.
But the original campaign was to try and strike into the Empire's heartland or whatever within 100 days or something. I remember that being spoken about in the council meeting. So I don't know if I don't know if we're still within that time limit.
Yeah.
If so, I mean, I guess 3 months is probably a decent amount of time for things to start growing on a planet. But
I can tell you the exact dates, in fact.
Okay.
They're in the show notes, which is the invasion of the Galactic Empire began on the 22nd of August, 796. And then at the end, that's the previous episode. And then episode 14, at the end of it, at the 10th of October, is when Reinhard orders the counterattack. So everything we saw had to have happened in,
a month and a half.
6 weeks.
A month and a half, yeah. It's baffling. It's really confusing. I did make a throwaway comment about this being like a Arrakis, but they have the irrigation machines that they have look like the thumpers from Dune. I thought that as well when I was watching it. And there's obviously this plot of turning it into a lush green world, which is one of the central conceits of Dune, or the central drivers of conflict in Dune. But it's all just brushed over. And it felt like a really empty reference to a much better story. You're just sort of trading in images or iconography without really earning anything. There were things about this episode that I liked, but this pacing thing and this sort of the structure of the story, I did not like at all.
Yeah, I thought there was quite a lot of strange moments in this one. The growing of the crops in the field at the beginning was one of these things. I mean, I guess it shows that the ensign is doing his best to try and help this planet, and supposed to teach you a bit about his character. And you hear about the banquet that they're going to throw, despite the townspeople having no food. That the lord of the planet, of the city, has kept some away, and he's going to throw a banquet, and he's invited some of the soldiers, and you get the ensign's or Franz's reaction to that. But
no, I mean, I also don't really find him much of a sympathetic character. Like, I sympathize with him to some extent, but he doesn't really do a lot to stop what's happening around him. I guess the story is trying to frame him as a tragic victim of what's taking place. But I didn't really buy his story. I wasn't particularly interested in it. He gets special treatment by the governor or whatever. He gets to go to the banquet. He feels self-pitying about it. He gets basically gifted the governor's daughter in a slightly creepy kind of exchange. And then he feels bad about it again, and then he gets beaten up, and then his story is over. It's not.
He nearly gets run over by a tank.
Yeah, but he just behaves in these incredibly stupid ways. Like, the only actions that he tries to take to stop anything from happening are just like, he just abandons self-preservation immediately. Like, he goes to an angry mob and he's like, oh, I know I represent the military who you hate, but don't do it, guys. And then later he literally throws himself in front of a tank. You're like, I don't know. He's not a very interesting character. And for the whole episode to center on him is a bit, a bit dull.
This episode, do you know when it aired?
I can tell you, thanks to the diligent fans. Maybe they don't have this information actually on the wiki. Okay, it's not
December
on there.
88 and June 89.
Oh, it's 1989 March question mark. We don't know. It's a mystery.
The only reason I ask is because I thought when he stands in front of the tank, that was a direct reference to the tank man, the protester. But that happens 2 months after this episode aired.
Yeah. Also, it didn't happen, Kamal. That's what you have to remember. Nothing happened.
Oh, okay. I see.
Okay, you can edit that part out.
Okay. Had me for a moment.
I just thought I thought that was a reference to it, and I thought that was pulling into your when you described like it was using images it didn't earn, and iconography it didn't earn, and symbolism it didn't earn. I thought that was part of that, but evidently not. Predates it. So
yeah.
Prophetic.
Prophetic. Yeah.
I got the sense that this episode was like an economic necessity, because for the episode after this, which, spoiler alert, I thought was a lot better, the story requires the two militaries to be in certain positions, and and in the episode before this one, 13, they were not in those positions, and so the writer has to get them from A to B. And I think that results in this very strangely paced, as you said, lots of shortcuts used in people's motivations and behaviors switching drastically from like how the alliance is introduced at the beginning, when they're like saviors and like bringing food to people and everyone's chill with them, and then as soon as the order comes in, we're gonna fucking kick those civilians' asses so bad, just instantly.
Like Order 66 was given, and they just start massacring.
Yeah, exactly. So everything feels like it was shortcutted in that way. So when, what's his name? Cezanne? I forget his name. When he thinks to himself, same thing. When he says to himself, which I love when out of nowhere we can hear the thoughts of the characters. By the way, I always think it's just whenever the writer decides. There's no rhyme or reason to it.
No,
but he says to himself, Yang Wenli, you better not die. This is too stupid of a ward for you to die in. Which that felt like the best line of the episode to me.
I agree with this is like an economic storytelling episode. It's kind of just fluff, right? To get people into positions they need to be in. I think you still could have accomplished that without this episode, and if you had compressed the last episode and this episode into one. I think you could have done it. I don't think there's anything in this episode that you couldn't have accomplished in a much more efficient way. I also think the two halves of this drama, like the way the imperial nobility and the way that the citizens react, are both somewhat interesting on their own. They would have been way more interesting to see juxtaposed in one episode. And I think giving less screen time to these supporting characters who we're never going to see again also would have wasted less of the audience's time. Is there anything good to say about this episode? Anything you'd point to and say, I liked that? Or
no, but here's what I'll say. I was just thinking about like how an episode like this happens, and I'm thinking to myself, when the studio is given the order or they're commissioned to 24 episodes of this anime, and then the writer has to go and figure out the structure of Act 1 is this many episodes, Act 2 is this many episodes. I have to get them to this point by episode 18.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just had this happen when I was writing Khalil, which is I structured out 13 chapters for book 2. And at some point I was like, I have no idea what to do with this. This is just an empty chapter. There's nothing that needs to I have nothing that happens here. The characters are all ready to get to the point past here, so I just cut the chapter. But obviously I'm an independent artist, so I don't have to, no one's commissioned me to make 13 chapters. But they have orders to release 24 episodes. So maybe that's just what happens,
I think it happens a lot in anime. Go on, Tom.
You're saying that the hierarchy of command of a plan falling apart, like is it sort of poetically mirrors the animation studio.
Saying Studio Kitty Mitaka underwent their own folly, failed crusade to complete a 24 episode series. I think it's at the end of this episode when the admirals of the Imperial fleet drink together, and I honestly think it was a great scene. It was almost worth the price of admission when Lowengram is like, victory is already assured, so this is a premature celebration. And then they were like, cool. And they just drink and they just throw the wine glasses on the floor. And it was great because I felt like something about the way that the dialogue was delivered and the way the scene was written, this didn't feel like a setup to hubris. This just felt like a statement of fact. Like the show was just warning us about what was going to happen in the very next episode.
I liked it because they're about to leave. I think they're all about to leave, and he's like, wait a moment, just before they all walk off. And then some part of my brain was like, are they going to do they're going to have and he has like a glass of wine already or something, so maybe you already know. I was like, oh, they're going to do the thing where they throw all the glasses on the floor. It's going to be good. And that's like the last bit of the episode. And I thought, good payoff.
The payoff, finally.
I think we did talk about a glass smashing scene in one of the early episodes as being the first of many. So good to see that.
It's one of my favorite tropes from the whole show. When they all say Prosit, which is an extremely, I've talked to a German or an Austrian friend who has assured me this is a very formal cheers. This is like the most formal imaginable cheers that you can give if you're drinking. So it's not like a conversational thing. And then they all throw the glasses on the floor. And there's like 6 different carefully animated scenes of a champagne flute smashing. I love it.
Just to do the reoccurring segment where Kamel edits the show, I think would have been nice because is it right after that where they cut to because this episode ends with the ensign who's now left his military post because he's like, call me Franz, I'm not the ensign anymore. And then he and the girl, I forget her name, I'm sorry, she's not really a character. Yeah, Therese.
Teresa.
When they both go to see her hometown being destroyed, right? That's in fact, is that the first time they've run footage over the credits?
I think it happened before.
They did it we talked about it in a previous episode. It happened in the Siege of Isilon, I think.
Maybe,
where the actual Siege of Isilon takes place over the credits. Yeah.
Anyway, if it was me making this, I would have cut straight from the Imperials smashing their glosses to like an explosion happening in that town.
Yeah.
And done a match cut from one to the other. But they're filmmaking cowards, and I'm not, so that's why they did it the way they did it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. I think they probably could have skipped all the chat they had, just shown the town on fire, maybe.
No joke, they should have.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been way better. I didn't really get the point of like after all that's happened, he like throws himself in front of the tank, and he's like, "I won't let you destroy these fields anymore." And you're like, seems like there's some bigger stuff going on at this point. I mean, I know the food is obviously the cause of the problem, but it no longer seems like these fields are going to be the anyway. Whatever. It seems like. Oh, another thing I liked about the show is I liked the sound the tank made when it fired. That was pretty cool. Whoever made that sound,
good sound direction.
Good work.
Yeah. During the up and down chain of command, we have I feel like quite a lot of it points towards stuff that we already know and already talked about, like you guys were saying, like the kind of corruption and stuff that's happening in the military and the incompetence as well. And we see Admiral Bucock, who is quite a cool character, one of the old admirals who's fairly who is
he's too old for this shit.
Yeah, he is.
That's like the vibe
he's
he gives
not
off
like
all the time.
Yeah, and he's not
retirement.
Yeah, and he's not someone who's really corrupt, or he still has high standards for himself and everybody else. And he is confronted by Andrew Falk on the other end of the intercom line, who just refuses to let him to talk to anybody else. And then has a kind of, they get in an argument, and he has a seizure, I guess.
Yeah, he just has a seizure.
What do they call it?
He
nerve blindness or something?
They call it hysteria in the translation I had.
Yeah.
And I was like, hysteria it's not a real thing. Like, did you talk to an actual doctor, or like
hysterical blindness?
Exactly.
He got so stressed he went blind.
Yeah. I mean, he me for real, but I don't know what was the point of this scene. I was thinking about it for so long afterwards, like into the next episode while I was watching. What was the point of this? Like, why did this happen? Why did Falk have this seizure? Like, absolutely no new information is learned apart from, I know that not every, I don't ascribe to this idea that every scene has to reveal like character world or whatever. It's just like baby's writing advice. But like, I also don't think anything interesting happens like in this scene.
I quite like that he was deliberately denying these other admirals like Bucock access to their own commander or their own superior back home, and they're just stuck. They're like, "Yeah, you can talk to me, and I'll pass the message on, and anything you say to me, I can. It doesn't really matter who hears it. We're all competent here, so I'll just pass the message on." You're like, this guy is so detestable. Like, I hate him so much. And you can see all the other characters are super frustrated with him as well. I thought that was like, I don't know, it sort of reinforces that. But to solve the issue with him having a seizure due to some sort of hysterical nerve blindness was a bit out of left field, I felt.
It was so out of left field.
Could have been solved in a different way.
Like, there's only a few possible things I can think. One was to clear the blockage in the chain of command, right? They just needed a way to clear the blockage so the story could progress. But they don't clear the blockage because later we get a scene where we find out the head admiral is like taking a nap. There's like the actual roadblock to like story progress is not actually Falk. He has a seizure and nothing changes.
Yeah,
the other thing I was thinking was like, was this supposed to be for the audience? Like, oh, thank God that terrible guy is out of the picture. But the guy had like a seizure. Like, to me, even though the guy is not very nice, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want that to happen to anyone, right? Like that doesn't seem like a good thing to happen, that you just go blind for 15 minutes. I It's so weird. This is bizarre. I have no answer to it. No.
Well, don't worry. They did say he would be fine after he rests for a bit.
But they might be reoccurring from now on. So
this is like when Marvel
there, I guess,
kills off a character, and then it's like the audience reacts badly, and he just comes back at the end of the film. Like, don't worry, he's actually fine. He survived.
Yeah,
he's good though.
Did you guys ever see episode 9 of Star Wars?
No.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, but this happens, right? Like famously.
So they spoilers for the worst Star Wars movie. They kill Chewbacca, and then everyone's screaming like, "No! How could you kill Chewie?" And then not 90 seconds later do they reveal he's alive. He's just been taken prisoner. And it's just like it shows so little courage as a writer. You can't wait 5 minutes even to reveal it. You just
I'm getting a sense of deja vu. I think we might have talked about this in the last episode. So if you're binge listening to the podcast for some reason,
this exact moment,
I think we talked about this exact moment last episode. I could be wrong.
We talked about Star Wars. I don't remember what we talked about.
I try not to think about that movie, so that seems really unlikely that I would have described that exact moment.
Or you still feel the pangs of nerve blindness coming on when you think about Chewbacca dying. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
you try not to think about it.
It's really stressing me out.
Let's move on.
I had 2 questions about this episode, which maybe you can or cannot answer. Yang Wen-li, the Miracle on Ice, Yang Wen-li, he directly references Napoleon and Napoleon trying to conquer Russia.
Yeah.
Another reference to Earth and its history, which so I get that Earth has existed, it was real, everything happened. So then, why did no one bring up that when they went to the planet that was fake Rome and fake Nero, and why did no one talk about how, hey, isn't this exactly like what happened 1,000 years ago or whatever?
Maybe he did realize just as he was about to get stabbed. Like, he's just like, oh my God, I can't believe I walked straight into this one. Like, and the togas and everything. Oh, God.
Yeah. Maybe it was all just a big costume party that day, and it was just unfortunate.
That's such a great headcanon. They were just having
yeah, they're actually just normal part of the Empire, just like everywhere else in the Empire. Because everywhere else we've seen in the Empire has looked the same. German and Imperial, not
cosplaying Rome.
Not Rome. So probably it was just a party, and he was probably kicking himself when he got stabbed. He was like, you couldn't make it up, could you? On the day that I ran my toga party. I just thought it would be an easy costume for everyone, cheap, just get a bed sheet. And here I am getting stabbed 12 times in the back by all my friends.
I never should have made friends with that guy Brutus. It was really my mistake.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so that's one question answered. My other question was, the commander-in-chief, his name is Lobos. Now, I don't know, that sounds like a reference to some myth or legend or aspect of history, like a person named Lobos, who I don't know who that is. Do you guys know if that's a person?
It's a good question. I don't. Have a look. Doesn't ring a bell. If it's someone important.
Spanish shop.
Yeah.
Because all I could think of is the DC Comics character Lobo, who's an intergalactic bounty hunter who dresses like a member of KISS.
Okay.
But I don't think it's a reference to that.
I'm getting a lot of pictures of wolves, and I'm getting Lobos 1707 award-winning premium tequila.
Probably that.
I think it might mean something like wolf in Spanish.
Like lupus, right?
Yeah. Right.
Lupus, Lobos.
I'm just going to try that. It's good content. Spanish. Lobos. Wolves.
He has many wolf-like qualities, Lobos, like
being
taking off
sleepy.
maps. Yeah.
Yeah, taking long naps.
No,
he's not really much of a character. Yeah, go for it.
Which is when the Imperials at the end are having their drinks and cheersing and breaking the glasses. In my subtitles, in my translation, they Lowen Graham references like in honor of or to the great god Odin. So do they actually directly worship the Norse gods?
Yeah, okay, yes. I think it's a slightly problematic reference to the Nazis' veneration for Germanic paganism. And in Germany, it would have been Woden instead of Odin. But it's basically the same god. That whole block in Europe worshipped like a very similar pantheon. But yes, they do. I don't think they really go very deep into like the religious structure of the empire. So to me, it always felt a bit like everyone is like, I worship. I got a temple on Saturnalia, but I'm not a practicing Odin worshipper.
Yeah, I don't think we really see many, or really any temples or any worship taking place or anything like that. It seems like the language around it has become kind of ceremonial, and they just sort of invoke it as a thing to say rather than there being a strong religious element behind it.
I wondered about that because in anime it's not been it's been known to happen where they just use religious symbols as decoration. Basically, it has import to it, so therefore we use it. So I wondered if it was a case of that. That's why they were using all those Norse religious symbols, or if it was more ingrained.
I don't think they explore it. I think it's probably just a reference to the Nazis, right? Like members of Hitler's staff wanted to replace Catholicism with German paganism. Hitler himself famously did not want to do this, but there were people on his team who did. So it's kind of connected to that. Yes.
Got you. Okay.
Does anything else happen in this episode? I'm checking the notes again. Rubinsky is in it.
Yes. Oh yeah, we have a quick cutaway, a Lex Luthor cutaway.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to all the other ones that we've had so far, I think. Yeah. But Dominique gets a couple of lines.
Dominique, I like. She appears many times throughout the show as one of the only women in the show with an actual goals, right? Like with a thing she wants that she's trying to get. That thing's just money and power. But she does have agency, unlike most of the other women in the show.
Does that comes later, I presume? I don't think they've given her.
Yeah, I don't think she ever really. She never really takes things under her own command. But unlike Frederica or some other characters we're going to meet in the future, who just exist to sort of be window dressing for the show, in my view. I don't know.
I don't know that that's the case for Jessica Edwards.
That's true. She
kind of has her own story.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
This Rubinsky scene, where he's basically seems like he's created this conflict to put the alliance in his to have them owe him money, basically. I did not think of Lex Luthor in this scene. I thought of Ozymandias from Watchmen.
Oh yeah.
Which, to be fair, Ozymandias is Lex Luthor, basically. But
I was going to say you're sort of you're staying on the same like phylogenetic branch here with the character.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I don't know. It felt more Alan Moore's Lex Luthor than anyone else's.
A bit more capitalist realism in there than just space lasers and kryptonite.
Yeah, classic Lex Luthor is more like, I hate Superman so fucking much. Whereas Alan Moore's is a bit, I have a plan. I want to do something, you know?
Yeah. I really like Ayn Rand. It's the only book I've read. I just love it. They should make more like this.
So, Zack Snyder's favorite book.
Yeah, big shock.
Yeah.
Didn't he direct Watchmen?
Yeah.
Justice League. Oh.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable to me that the guy who directed Watchmen is like, I love Ayn Rand. You just couldn't have picked a worse person. Yeah.
Do you know what might be even worse for you personally, Joel, is that his favorite movie, and in fact, he wrote Justice League as basically an analogy for, is Excalibur.
Oh, God. That makes me really upset. I love that film.
I thought that would upset you. In Batman v Superman, little boy Bruce Wayne, he's not leaving a screening of Zorro when his parents get killed. He's leaving a screening of Excalibur.
Yeah, I'm sure he loved that experience. Child Bruce Wayne coming out of Excalibur, like, that was great. I love the part where they had an acid trip, like an acid flashback where the Grail appeared. It was great.
Oh, that explains the sort of acid flashback that Batman has in that film.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do an episode about Excalibur before I just go off the rails.
I'll only agree to that if it's also about Justice League.
We do a double billing, Excalibur and Justice League.
We're going to juxtapose the two. Nobody's ever done it apart from, of course, Zack Snyder himself. But, it's sort of a Patreon.
Yeah, in the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, actually, the Snyder cut, they put the entire film Excalibur in the movie theater while Bruce Wayne's watching it.
You see Bruce Wayne go in, but it's like watching a pirated version of Excalibur because it's from Bruce Wayne's perspective. So you see like all these other audience members in front of you.
That would have been a better film.
Yeah. God, I love that film. Excalibur is so good.
That's why the director's cut is so long. It's the only reason.
I think that probably sums up our feelings on episode 14, in that we ended up discussing Excalibur and Zack Snyder instead.
A bad episode.
We talked last time about episodes that you could skip. Like, has anyone made a like
an abridged version?
Yeah, abridged version or whatever. Like a list of episodes saying which ones you need to watch, which ones you can skip. If you want to speed run the series, I don't know why you'd ever want to speed run the series, but just in case. I feel like this one could definitely be on that list. You don't really learn anything new.
Mm-hmm.
I think the story would make sense if you didn't have this one. So I'd put that on the list.
Yeah, I agree. Tend to agree.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one, 15. Shall I read the summary? It's very short. Do you have the title? It's missing from the notes.
The Battle of Amritsar or Amritsar Star Zone. Amritsar.
I think it's Amritsar after the Indian city.
Yes. But in my subs, it was Amritsar with a Z, T.
And an L, me too.
Yeah.
Episode 15, The Battle of Amritsar, sorry. The Three Planets Alliance invasion force is attacked. The 3rd, 7th, and 12th fleets are destroyed, and the 5th, 8th, 9th, and 10th fleets are heavily damaged. Only the 13th fleet has managed to escape without taking too much damage. Fleet Admiral Lassalle Lobos orders the fleets to regroup in Amritsar Star Zone. Reinhardt orders his admirals to regroup in the same area in order to destroy the remaining Alliance fleets. The Alliance fleets suffer further losses during the Battle of Amritsar on the 15th of October, 796 UC. That's quite a lackluster summary of the episode, but that's what it says.
Yeah, a lot happens in this episode, and very short summary.
I mean, it's an episode about a single battle, right? That's what it felt like to me. Lots of little battles in one big battle, I guess. It's kind of between different fronts. I did not know the name of the episode when I started watching this.
Yeah.
So at the end, when we can go through it bit by bit, but I just wanted to say this part, which is at the end when the commanding officer orders everyone to retreat to Amritsar.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, and like they're losing this fight, and it seems like they're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this was a direct it seemed impossible to me that this was not a direct reference to the massacre that happened in Amritsar in 1919, which is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, where like the British killed 1,000 people or so, like peaceful protesters.
Yeah.
Seemed impossible that it was not a reference to that.
I would, given that this episode is basically just a lot of people dying, the death count is very high. I would assume that is a somewhat. I don't know how great it is to make these kind of references, but yeah, I would assume it's a reference.
I don't know why else you would name it that. Like,
yeah, I hadn't made that connection. That's interesting.
But anyway, so what happens in this episode is basically what Yang Wen-li warned everyone would happen, which is we've had our supply lines cut, we're weak, we're hungry, and now they come for the counterattack.
Yes.
Which some of the commanding officers are shocked by. They're like,
yeah,
how could this have happened? Who could have seen this coming?
Why did no one tell me?
I thought this Falk guy had a plan. He spoke so eloquently.
Couple of comments on this episode. First of all, we're with a different animation team again. This episode is one of those ones that is done by a different team. So Yang Wen-li's face is looking a little softer. And
it's got spaceships in it.
The moving spaceships. There's a lot more dynamism in the episode. The animation is much higher quality in some ways.
Oh yeah, crispy, so good. I really enjoyed the space parts.
Yeah, it felt like watching Gundam or something. It was very good.
Totally.
The other thing about this episode is we did have it a little bit in the last episode, but we get pretty heavy use of Anton Dvorak's Symphony No. 9. Which is going to be repeating.
One note I have on my sheet. The music is back. Is my one note on my pad of paper.
My boy Dvorak is back. Yeah. This song is kind of the unofficial theme tune of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, this piece. And it's kind of associated with the Empire, I guess. So like as they're just like absolutely crushing the Democratic fleet, this plays throughout the whole episode.
Is the opening of that music, of that score that they use, like at the very beginning of the episode when the music starts, it sounds like the opening to Jaws.
I can't remember the opening to Jaws.
Oh yeah, it does.
Yes, it is that. Like it is that. Yeah, it does that. Yeah, the sort of roll.
I should have a link.
But then after that, it has the brass section, which sounds very similar to Star Wars. And I'm 90% certain that John Williams, who did the Star Wars, sorry, tripping over words, Star Wars soundtrack, took heavy inspiration from Dvorak. So.
Who did the Jaws soundtrack?
John Williams.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
He loves Dvorak.
He basically stole this piece of music multiple times.
Yeah. It's a reference. It's a homage.
It's not the only homage to Star Wars in this episode, right? Because we
the bit where Chewbacca, that was rough.
Well, just before Chewbacca dies and then doesn't, it's when we go down to the decks and meet the pilots, who, for all intents and purposes, are two Luke Skywalkers dressed in Rebel pilot uniforms.
Yes. Yeah. The costumes are, I would say, plagiarized from Star Wars. There's been some light inspiration taken here and there. You can spot it if you're really paying attention.
I will say, whoever the costume designer is, the character designer for those, either was not given as much leeway as the ship designer, because those ships are unique and cool. Like, they don't look like ships from other things. They don't look like I was thinking those fights that we see in this episode compared to dog fights we see in Star Wars. In Star Wars, they're essentially just planes moving in a 2D plane with barrel rolls and stuff. And these guys are like zip zapping all over the place and moving in all strange directions, shooting in opposite directions from where they're moving, and you get a real sense of three-dimensionality to their space warfare that you don't even get in the large ship battles that they show in this same episode, which also seemingly only exist in 2D planes, because that's how they continuously represent it on the maps that Yang Wen-Li is looking at.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think the ship design, like the strike craft designs in Legend of the Galactic Heroes, are just so cool. I remember thinking about it the first time, because they have this hinge in the middle, the Imperial ones. We only get like a very short image of the Imperial ones, but it's like they have 3 hulls, and then the hulls like rotate around each other. So you can basically be like firing in 3 different directions at once with this strike craft, and they still succeed in being readable, like to the audience. Very, very good design. And as you say, kind of weird to have these guys in the Star Wars Rebel costumes get into these very intentionally designed and very unique ships. I also love the way they're used in the show as well. Like, they're used to destroy like larger ships. It's not like we don't get these like TIE fighter versus X-Wing dogfights as much. It's like these strike craft gun and take out like big ships.
The other thing I was going to say is these pilots have a little bit more character to them. They feel like everyone is so the baseline for characters on the show is kind of wooden, and from the word go, these pilots have a little bit more charisma to them, like as you expect the pilot archetype to have. They're like hot shots. It's very much Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica. Sure. That's the energy they're giving.
Yeah, I agree. I think he like attacks his superior officer.
He does.
And then he like punches a wall or something, like just because like a lens is off by like 12 degrees or something like this.
It's because they have this conversation before he goes out to fly, where someone's trying to repair his his ship before he flies off, and he tells her to hurry up, and she panics, and he's like, "She should do it right, or we can't be taking chances." And then she rushes it, and he goes out, and then his sights are off, and he nearly gets killed, and he goes back and takes out the officer who gave that command to fly out before it was ready. But yeah, still it does highlight that kind of slightly more like reckless nature that you can't really have if you're a member of in another role in the military, I guess.
Unless you're Royenthal, this is the first episode where he gets any screen time, or Bittenfeld actually.
Right. I guess I guess that's true. Maybe it's the kind of I agree there. Plucky charisma.
I just wanted to give a shout out to the best shot in this episode, which is when the pilot launches from the ship and they're going through the launch procedure like it's Evangelion, and they do the first person point of view shot of the ship exiting the carrier, and it heads out in space. What a great shot. That seems like a shot from an anime 10 years after this came out.
Yeah. It's like uncharacteristically dynamic and just really, really good. It took me by surprise for a show that spends most of its time with just static background, static characters. So should we go a bit into the plot of the episode? It's not like it's mostly just the Alliance getting absolutely devastated over and over and over again. Things just continue to go wrong the whole way through the episode.
I do like that one of the fleets that we're following. I think the first one we see when the commanding officer is like discussing what the options are, and then like he says either to himself or to his second in command, like, "Man, we just have to hold off until Yang Wen-Li can show up and save us." And like it's like the legend of Yang Wen-Li has become so powerful that it's allowed it's made the Alliance commit to stupid decisions that are not tactically advantageous because they have. It's like it doesn't matter how bad the Chicago Bulls are in the '80s. We have Michael Jordan, so we're gonna win.
Yeah.
And famously, they didn't for 10 years. This is the only analogy I'll use for Yang Wenli throughout us recording this show. I'll only refer to him as Jordan.
Yeah.
I also like that. This sort of thing happens, and then it like cuts back to Yang Wenli multiple times, and a new thing happens that he gets some information. He's like, "We're really screwed," like out loud, and everyone just stares at him like Admiral, and he's like, "Do this," and says like some new maneuver or whatever. But he just keeps saying out loud like how bad the situation is.
I think they do this joke 3 times, and I enjoyed it all 3 times because the reactions of the crew are like slightly different. And I think the last time he does it, he gets chastised by Frederica. She's just like, Yang, like Commander, like stop doing this. He's just sitting on the dashboard of his ship like a cat. Like, oh man, we're really screwed now. Like,
I do like the way he's sitting there. It feels like anime shorthand for this guy's a genius when the character sits strangely. It's very L from Death Note, or a third example to prove my point.
Yeah, yeah, very, very well put. I agree. Yeah, yeah. I also love that, like, his genius and his ability. There's a bit when he just retreats, right? Like he's fighting against Vala, is it? One of the Imperial admirals who's slightly less interesting than the others. And he's fighting, and then he's like, "Oh, organize a retreat and like reshape the fleet into like a crescent shape or whatever, and then retreat." And then he's like, basically, all he's doing is just trying to get out of the fight. But then the Imperial side, they're like, "Should we pursue?" It looks like they're trying to retreat, and he's like, "No way, man. That's Yang Wenli we're talking about. If we chase after him, there's going to be an ambush." So like his legend has not only impacted the competence of his own team, but also is earning him victories against the Empire.
Does he? I wasn't clear if Yang Wenli knew that. Like he knows that this has a psychological impact on the decision-making process of the enemy commander. So that's why he made the present shape.
Yeah, we're going to get back into the weeds on how much of this is intentional. Yeah.
I think that he doesn't really know how much the Empire kind of respect him and know about him and kind of like fear his or like are wary of his genius. I think his plan here was like the plan kind of that he said to make it seem like they were stronger than they are, and then wait for the enemy to hesitate or pull back a little bit, and then just retreat as fast as possible, and just hope that that's what the enemy did. But I didn't get the impression that he hoped they would retreat because he was the one who was in charge, laying the plan out. But I hadn't really thought about it.
No, I think how you describe it makes sense. Yeah, that seems more in line with his character. Yeah, we get the first not depiction, not event, not Islamophobia happens in this episode, and I'll tell you why. Because Commander Al-Salam, the first guy with an Arab-sounding name or Muslim-sounding name, gets killed in an extremely violent way. They say he's not dead, but we know. And to depict it so violently and to single it out, I think, speaks to the inherent Islamophobia in the show. Anyway, I just didn't like seeing that. I think there should be more Muslim representation in this show.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely, completely agree with you. I mean, how else are we supposed to interpret this depiction of his death? Yeah.
Exactly, and imagine how you'd be depicted if you disagreed with me right now. You know?
Wow. Yeah. That's so true.
I've got you in a Yang Wenli type trap right there.
Yeah.
Gonna withdraw as fast as possible.
No, don't chase him down. There has to be an ambush coming.
Yeah.
His death was pretty brutal. He gets whipped with a cable, right? Like that's how he goes out.
But I would not say that's the most shocking death of the episode.
No, there's a lot of shocking deaths.
Well, one in particular that got me was the other commander who mentions, he asks one of his secondary officers, hey, did this, I forget, what does he ask exactly?
I think he's like, it's something about reinforcements arriving, or like,
or how many other fleets are down or something like that.
Yeah.
And then what does he do in response to that information?
He runs himself a hot bath, and he just takes a load off, and he just he tries to chill out.
Yeah. No, unfortunately he does. He does. Yeah. Unfortunately, he takes his own life, which shocked me. Actually, obviously we've had a suicide in the show before, but this one happened so suddenly. And I think is way more effective at communicating the desperation of the situation than all of the cable whipping or exploding bridge scenes that we've had up to that point.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Is it at that point that Commander Lobos wakes up from his nap and is told of the requests for everyone to retreat? That's
how long was this guy's nap,
right?
Yeah. Like this guy must have been napping for 2 days or something. Like, he's taking his afternoon nap. But it's like in space, there's no afternoon, so we just, whenever he's ready to wake up.
The famous line, no afternoon in space.
Yeah.
And then he essentially rejects the request, right? Or like doesn't exactly accept it.
Yeah. In a shocking display of military incompetence that we've not seen up to this point in the show. He basically commands them to just keep dying.
I think gather together around a particular star to die together.
He gives the order to. He's the one who gives the order to go to Amritsar.
Yeah. Which, if he knew his history, he knew what was going to happen with a name like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to be fair to him, he did just wake from his nap. And when you're groggy after you wake up from a nap and you're like, you're not making the right decisions. Like, should I let these guys retreat? Should I send them to die?
Yeah.
It's like a 50-50.
50-50. And also you have to remember that his staff officer did just have a seizure and went blind for 15 minutes for some reason. So
why didn't we see like the 15 minutes? Like that was last episode. Surely the 15 minutes is over and we could have found out what happened to him by now.
I'm just looking at the timeline. How much time? What is the time span of this episode? Do we know?
Yang Wenli didn't eat for at least 15 hours, so at least 15 hours is a lower limit.
I think it's only a week. Or 5 days, because Reinhardt gives the order on the 10th of October, and this battle ends on the 15th of October. So we go from an episode that is paced somewhat kind of mindlessly, almost as if someone didn't bother to pace it, to an episode that is so fast-paced. Like, there is so much going on in this episode. It's relentless. It's a very short space of time.
I liked all the different color ships in this one. I know we talked about the little fighters having quite cool designs, but I like all the Imperial. They have all of these admirals, like these kind of big name. Well, they're not really big name at this point, but they all have their own kind of journeys that we're going to see them go on. The guys who all do the prosit and smash their glasses at the end of the last episode, and they're all out there on their different ships, and like Lowengram was on his like pure white Brunhild ship, and Kirky Ice is rocking around in this like bright red spaceship, bright red flagship. It looks like a sports car.
Called Barbarossa. You're like,
it's called Barbarossa. And And then Bittenfeld's on that black Lancer ship, which has got quite a cool design. And there might have been a couple of other ones as well.
I think every ship should be the color of the commanding officer's hair.
Like
Kirk,
it's going to be like a
I think
like a Madoka Magica situation. Yeah.
I think it's just useful to the audience as well, like to understand which, who's in what ship. That's why the Power Rangers is such successful visual communication.
Right.
Okay. I see. Right.
Because they all have the same colors as their hair, or
no? Because the color of the suit is the same as the robot.
Yes, exactly.
That's why. There's not because of any other poor decision making on the part of the screenwriters.
Yeah.
Well, famously for the first series, they did make the Black Ranger black.
The Black Power Ranger. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think they went away from in the last 30 years.
Maybe move away from that. Yeah.
So they all retreat to Amritsar, which is right above the surface of a star. Is that what I'm reading
it's called Amritsar Star Zone, which I assume that when they talk about star zones, they're talking about sectors of space, like either multiple stars that are close together or entire star systems. So the fleets like position themselves around the star, because that's part of Yang Wenli's plan, right? Like he drops bombs into the star to ride the solar wind.
Such a cool moment.
Yeah.
Isn't he doing like a rocket jump from Doom or like Quake or whatever?
It's extremely silly and extremely cool. I like that. Yeah, there's like these little moments where they win a tiny victory, and you're like, oh, maybe this is the turning point. But then no, the Alliance just get like stomped on again and again. There's a really cool scene. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, please.
Oh, there's a very cool moment, I thought, when there's like a ship that crashes into another ship. It's just like an animation thing. The level of dynamism in this episode, where they sort of smash into an asteroid and like basically scrape along the surface of the asteroid. And the shot like lingers for such a long time. Like that must have been expensive or challenging to draw. Again, it's unusual for the show to give us this kind of visual fidelity.
It's true. I mean, this whole scene in Amritsar was visually arresting with all the red reflecting off of everything. I did think they're very close to the star. Would it not be too hot for these ships? I don't know. But whatever. It's sci-fi, and I don't understand science really, so maybe it's fine. The only other thing I would say is that I think this whole the scene with Yang Wenli in particular, I think really reinforces his abilities and decision making in moment to moment like warfare. Like he seems to make all the right decisions and exploits small mistakes by the Imperials. Like keeps his ship alive and destroys their ships. So much so that Lowen Graham gets really fucking mad about it.
Yeah,
and is like,
right.
When another officer is asking for fire support, and he's like, "Fuck no! What do you think? What fire support do I have to offer you? In fact, blocked.
Yeah.
I'm not responding to any more of your tweets. Blocked.
Blocked. Yeah. None of you are free of sin.
Yeah.
Which is
it's quite a big moment because this is one of his key Prosit glass smashing admirals that makes this mistake. The guy with the kind of red hair, the orange hair, and he's just so mad at him for jumping the gun with his attack that he just cuts all communication.
I think it's great early character work for Bittenfeld as well, because he will reappear, and he is basically a liability for the fleet for the entire show, at least the section of the show where he is present. He's
hot-headed,
and we establish that in this battle, which I think is efficient, right? Like there's so much other stuff going on. There's no reason necessarily to spend time doing character work, but they do for the sake of Bittenfeld.
I think you wouldn't necessarily know unless you had seen it before and knew about his character that you see this thing happen, right? Because you know, there's so many characters at this point, you don't know who's going to be important and who isn't. But he has other episodes in the future. There's also this moment where Kirky Ice is kind of late to the battle, or gets held up in the previous battle, and Lowengram asks Obersteiner, "Where's Kirky Ice? Is he here yet?" It's like, "He's not here yet. Are you worried?" He's like, "I'm not worried. I'm just making sure."
Yeah. I'm not worried. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
What happens after this?
Basically, like, tons of people die, and then Kirky Ice clears the minefield with Zephyr particles and manages to pass through. And then they're like, "Oh, Kirky Ice's entire fleet of 30,000 ships has made it through the minefield." And Yang Wenli basically just goes, "Oh man, we're fucked." And this time you believe him. That basically the battle is over.
It feels like it's kind of not over, right? Like, we haven't really seen the end of it. But then the what's the word? Like, the voiceover guy,
the narrator.
The narrator, that's the word. He he says that it's the end of the battle at the end of the episode. So.
It just seemed like he called it a bit early.
Yeah, right.
13 seconds on the clock. Scores is way too high.
Did a bit and failed.
Yeah, it's a devastating loss for the Alliance. Who could have predicted this tragedy, really? It just came completely out of left field. To me, it feels like the show should have set up at least given us some warning that something like this would have happened, before this. But.
Everything that's happened with this battle and has all felt inevitable, like dominoes falling, ever since Lowengram revealed his plan to starve his people.
Yes,
It was always going to end right here. Because it had to, because the Alliance were hubristic. Is that a word? Let's say it is.
Yeah,
hubristic. And you cannot reward hubris in a story, so you have to tear him down. So it did feel a bit like, this is all going to happen. I wish there was some dramatic tension to it happening, and like there was some risk it. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, it didn't feel like there was any dramatic tension to it because I knew this was all going to happen the way it did.
I think that's what's so disappointing. Sorry, go on, Tom.
Okay. I was going to say, I think that's fair to some extent. I also think, like, the dominoes effect is quite a good analogy. That, like, it feels like the setup that's been done multiple episodes ago is all just played out as we kind of expected. Everything was set up, and now everything's kind of falling down into place. And I think this happens loads of times throughout the show. And the longer the show goes on, the longer it feels like the line of dominoes is, because you started at one place and now you're seeing the whole thing come down. So it's kind of interesting to hear you describe it like that. And I hope that it will feel like that again in the future when so many more moving parts will come together and kind of tumble in this way. And there'll be surprises and there'll be dramatic moments and things too. But I like this aspect of the story all like clicking into place like that.
Yeah. For me, I think the fact that it's basically dominoes is part of the show's structure, as Tom says. Like, a lot of the arcs are like this, where we see like early failures, early kind of checks that get have to be cashed later. The disappointing thing for me about this arc, I suppose, is that the last 2 or 3 episodes should have been spent in a better or leaner arc, exploring the ideological differences of the two sides and how they're dealing with the challenges that have been faced, or the challenges of the war. Obviously, the show is trying to do that with the starvation. Like, the Empire are willing to take these kind of measures against their people because they're an autocratic country, and the Alliance are pressured to feed people because they're framing themselves as a liberation force. I just wish all of this stuff had been more interesting, like leading up to this point. I wish we had had a bit more dialogue between these two ideologies, and a bit less fluff or filler. That's my takeaway from this like Crusade arc.
Crusade, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I should say when I talk about like the dominoes falling and there's like an aspect of cause and effect that is creating this conclusion to this arc, I do not think that that's a bad thing. I think that's a good and necessary thing to have in a story. Otherwise, you just have random things happening for no reason. I should understand
like having a seizure on.
Sure. Yeah. But like, I think, you know, you have to deliver these things in a way that makes story logic or whatever, with the cause and effect. But I think you can deliver it in unexpected ways, which is, I think, what any audience member wants. And I think this did it in a quite expected way. The best parts of this episode were the unexpected parts. So it was, you know, the suicide off screen was very unexpected for me, but makes complete logical story sense for why that happens. The sick nuclear bomb rocket jump was great. I actually really enjoyed all of the aspects of Yang Wenli's moment to moment problem solving. There's something really enjoyable about seeing people who are good at their job do their job, like the process of them doing the thing. And nowhere is that better seen than Yang Wenli, like moment to moment try and problem solve his way out of this stupid battle. That's really enjoyable to watch. And you don't get to see that so much in the show, I think. At least so far.
Yeah, at least so far.
That was great.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that like having these unexpected twists and turns, which they should flow as a direct response to what the story is doing, right? Like this off-screen suicide or these kind of things, as you say, are totally expected once they've happened, but you still experience that surprise of it taking place. Andrew Falk's seizure is an example of doing, I think, this badly, where an unexpected event drives the plot forward in really not very meaningful ways, and also doesn't seem expected after it happens, right? Like the audience is not thinking, oh, of course, this guy's got issues with stress management, or he's got like nerve damage or whatever. It seems silly. And I think it's a real tragedy, I suppose, in the smallest possible sense, that the last 2 or 3 episodes have been so lackluster on rewatch. I think you could have told such an interesting story about how a democratic government deals with taking over a planet or a region that has been under authoritarian rule for centuries. What are the challenges associated with that? How do you institute new kind of policies or institutions? How do you deal with the existing government there? All this kind of stuff. All of that stuff was just sort of thrown out the window for 2 very boring cookie cutter love stories and 1 predictable arc about this riot taking place over food.
I don't know how it plays out in the manga. I wonder if there's more time or space dedicated to these kind of stories. But even then, like, it's hard for me to imagine them really being particularly meaningful in the large picture of the story. Like, I mean, having one of them maybe, but having 2 on 2 different planets seems a little bit excessive. So,
yeah, I would have loved to see a plot like rather than a democratic soldier shooting like a rioter. If you had a story about the occupation force killing people in an extrajudicial way, in an unexpected way, right? Like they get slightly too ahead of themselves. They shoot someone they think is a threat who isn't a threat, and it leads to a diplomatic incident. Then you have the kind of trial by jury legal system of the Alliance clashing with the trial by decree system of the Imperium, and that people don't actually feel that justice is being done as a result, and all this kind of stuff. Things that, actually happen in real wars.
Yeah, I feel like the show actually becomes more confident about doing that. Way later in the show, there's a thing that I'm remembering that happens that feels a bit more like that, like somewhere kind of gets taken over and something happens that shouldn't happen because of these are the things that happen as in war soldiers do, and it does become a kind of an incident. So yeah, maybe it's kind of an early days thing, and the show gets better at it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think about, as you were describing this alternative version of episodes 14 and 13, of what could have been, is I couldn't help but think about the only good Star Wars thing of the last 5 years, which is Andor.
Yeah, sure.
Written by Tony Gilroy and some other folks, but it goes into these things.
Yeah.
I think you guys would really quite like it. It feels like it's of the same ilk in that it not responds to, but is analogous for other historical rebellions against oppressive forces.
It's definitely been on my to watch for ages, and the only reason I haven't watched it is because you need a Disney Plus subscription, and I can't be getting a subscription to every obviously I could get it by other means, yo ho ho, but I haven't got around to it yet, so yeah.
Okay. I don't think I've got no more notes on this episode. I really loved this episode. I thought it was one of the best of the show. It's just disappointing that it came after such two downers.
Yeah. I also really liked this episode, especially on rewatch. It's actually even better in its context on rewatch than it was the first time through. I liked everything about it. I think, as you say, the visual presentation is not done by Studio Kitty, despite their heroic work on the rest of the show. And it really does show the extra money that was spent on this episode.
Definitely.
And great. Can we get out of 10 rankings for the last two episodes, Kamal? And then maybe I don't know if we're doing Kamel's prediction corner yet, or whether you think we should wait till next arc.
Yeah, I can give you a prediction right now. And I'll think of it as soon as I've given you my ratings. So we watched episodes 14 and 15. 14, I got to give it a low 7 out of 10. And episode 15, which I love, one of my favorite of the series, got to give it a high 7 out of 10.
See what's going on here.
Just an impossible to read rating. Is it good? Is it bad?
Yeah, this is Kamal Rizvi for IGN.
It's a video game. 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
And then my one big prediction, which I've now thought of, is they'll make their whoever survives of the Alliance will make their retreat. And despite their catastrophic failure, the government will put such spin on it that they'll spin it in a way that to say it may have been a loss, but the ones who survived thanks to the work of Yang Wenli and his miraculous efforts in the final battle and his ingenious fusion bomb rocket jump, or they won't mention specifics, but they will, I think, use this as more opportunity to be it would have been even worse without him, which I think is true. But
it's true. Yeah.
I think that's probably what will happen.
If it wins them the election, then it wins them the election. That's what this was all about. Maybe we'll find out soon. Yeah.
Riding Yang Wenli all the way to not the Oval Office, I guess. I don't know what they would call it.
I don't know if they actually give us a name. The Circle Office, because they are sitting at a round table.
Oh, another Excalibur reference.
I don't actually know if you saw it, but the maybe they don't mention it in this episode. But is it Roenthal's ship? Is called the Percival, after the Arthurian character. Oh yeah, and Mittenmeyer's is the Tristan, I think.
Oh yeah, Mittenmeyer's ship does just rock up, doesn't it? Like he
Yeah.
He's called they call him the Gale Wolf, right? That's his nickname.
Yeah.
I don't think they've mentioned that in the show yet, maybe. But he he seems to be so fast in this episode. He pulls up alongside the Alliance ships. They look out the window and they're like, "What? Who is this?" They're like, "Oops, pull back a bit, guys. We can't shoot them from here. Too close."
Yeah, it's like he's parallel parking or something. He's like, "Whoops, I had a bit far. Let's back up a bit."
Do the Alliance get cool names for their ships, or are they all like C-102 or whatever?
Yang's ship is called the Hyperion. Probably a reference to the book. Yeah.
Is that like that's like a legendary sci-fi series, right?
Yeah. It's basically Canterbury Tales in space.
That'll probably get adapted into an Amazon show that will get cancelled after 2 seasons.
I believe it is being adapted into an Amazon show that will almost certainly be cancelled within 2 seasons. Yeah.
That's God. You have to feel bad for Hyperion fans.
Yeah. I think these cowards, they should just adapt Canterbury Tales, in the original Old English. Yeah.
He'll come around, Joel. Everyone after this wave of sci-fi has died down. Yeah, are we on a wave of sci-fi? I really don't know. Lord of the Rings was the last big one, so probably not.
I think season 2 of The Wheel of Time just came out.
It's amazing that they're still making this crap. Like, these shows released to just like critical and commercial failure, and they just commit to like doing them. Like, I don't understand what the incentives are anymore. Like, the incentive structure of these studios doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It's like hyper reality.
Isn't it just? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it just be the biggest and continue growing?
It's like the Uber model, or like blitz scaling, but for TV. How could it possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
It's extremely expensive process.
But it's good that the writer's strike ended, so it's good. It's good for the writers. They get to finally understand. Like before this, streamers would just be able to cancel shows and not explain why, and like even if the ratings were good or bad, they never had to say. Now they have to tell the writers. And they get. I think they get
3
better
years,
residuals.
Right? 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, a victory is a victory.
Yeah.
Now they can all go back to making us slop for another 3 years, and then.
As Yang Wenley once said, that'll be his victory speech when he goes back. Well, not victory speech. A win is a win.
The writers are also covered under the WGA as well. Like the things you like are also covered by the WGA, not just One Piece live action or whatever.
Yeah, I'm holding out hope for Excalibur 2. It's never too late,
What would you guys do if they announced a live action adaptation of The Legend of the Galactic Heroes?
I don't think I would watch it. I like the OVA. I mean, like, we've talked about this actually a couple of times on other podcast projects that were less successful than this one.
Successful, were they?
A remake is good if it brings something genuinely new to the original work, but also like critiques the original work, right? It's like the work of a sequel is to reframe the original question of the first film or the first story. Just remaking something is basically playing to nostalgia. It's like you can go and relive your childhood, or you can go and relive your teenage years. You can't go back to those times. You're old now and irrelevant, and making podcasts about about sci-fi animes from the 80s.
I think the classic example of what you're describing is when Zack Snyder made a shot-for-shot perfect adaptation of Watchmen, the comic book, which is just not good, although some fans love it, but they're wrong. And Damon Lindelof's HBO series Watchmen, which I think, hot take, is in some ways better than the original comic and speaks to like some of the issues that Alan Moore was speaking about, and Like, I mean, the real great shame is that I think Alan Moore would really like the show if he didn't hate the idea of the show.
Yeah. I mean, Alan Moore is I think he's doing fine, like being a wizard on his in his hut in Somerset. I think I agree with you that basically adapting a work or remaking a work is a waste of time. And this is why I won't watch the Noy Thesis or whatever it's called, the new Legend of the Galactic Heroes show. Like the modern
Is it just
remake.
a straight for straight like remake?
Yeah, they've adapted it a bit, but to my knowledge, they haven't like asked any new questions. There's no new themes going on. There's no new like. There's no
they probably ask fewer
reflecting on the original show. Yeah, fewer questions, if anything.
Probably. But you will maybe come full circle, not full circle, but to wrap up in May this year, there is a Chinese studio that have announced that they will be making a live action adaptation of Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Legend of the Galactic Heroes. We totally forgot to cover this. We forgot to talk about this. We should have talked about it on the podcast. We're such amateurs. This Chinese studio said they were going to make it, and then basically the owners of the copyright for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, this big like Japanese conglomerate who own like 1 billion old anime IPs, were like, we've literally never spoken to this studio before. We have no idea what they're talking about. Like, this is they basically just announced this. Like, no, I might be misrepresenting the story, but this is my understanding, is basically that like the studio dropped this announcement with no go ahead from the people who actually own the IP, which is bizarre.
So this is not like a fan project. This is a commercial project that they never got the
rights for. It's a commercial project, yeah.
Wow.
Maybe they believed that they had the rights for it. Like, there may have been something lost in the process, but yeah.
Well, like they sent an email saying, hey, can we have the rights to Legend of the Galactic Heroes? Don't reply if we do.
Okay. Yeah. Person who's going to give me the rights to Legend of the Galactic Heroes says, what?
Well, let's do it. Let's cast the live action Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Who's going to play Yang Wenli? I don't know any like Chinese or Southeast Asian actors. I just don't know.
We got to get Tony Leung out of retirement. We got to bring him out. Yeah, he's maybe a little old for the role, but he's still got it.
You can kind of de-age people these days, right? Like they did with Harrison Ford in the new Legend of Indiana Jones
project of the last 10 years.
Or they did it in The Irishman, and it famously looked great, flawless, guys. Love the way that film looks.
I love The Irishman. I thought that was a good movie.
Oh, it's a great film. Great film, yeah.
Do you know what the original title of that film was?
The Man.
No, it was like,
what if we made him from somewhere? I don't know. How about
what's
Island?
This guy's story? Where's he coming from? Where's he going to?
It's one of the lines he says that he uses as a euphemism for killing people. He says, when someone asks him, what do you do? He says, I paint houses, which is what the original title was. And Netflix were like, people are going to think this is about a painter or something, like a house repair guy. And they told Scorsese no.
I mean, yeah, Netflix are probably right about that one. I don't know if they were right to force a retitle, but they're like, our viewers, they want slop, okay? And if they see a film called I Paint Houses, they're going to assume it's a low budget Netflix documentary about painting houses.
I think it's a better title than The Irishman, but
I agree.
Who would you like to direct the live action adaptation of Legend of the Galactic Heroes? You got a director. You'd love to see their take.
I'd love to see what Zack Snyder could cook up with a big fan of it.
Yeah.
I just want to see what film he chooses to put in when Yang Wenli goes to the cinema. And
yeah.
Probably Star Wars, right? He'd probably just misunderstand the project and be like, space battles.
No, he'd probably put in Justice League, but it would be the scene from Justice League where Batman is watching Excalibur. I also like, why did that coward not put in a scene where Batman, as Batman, goes back and emotionally, tearfully revisits Excalibur in his like personal cinema room in the Batcave? I want him in costume, eating like popcorn, crying, and watching Excalibur. Call me, Zach. I've got some ideas for the next one.
Of either Justice League or Batman v Superman. I forget. It's when he's unveiling the Hall of Justice, and then Bruce Wayne is like, he's talking to Wonder Woman, and he like sticks out his hand. He's like, I'm imagining a big round table right in the middle that we can all sit at. He says that out loud.
Yeah, this isn't a joke you're making. This is actually a scene.
It's a scene in the film, yeah.
God damn it. This guy's I don't want to get sued for libel. I don't know if you can get sued for libel for calling someone an idiot. So just imagine that I did
like his films. He seems like a nice guy.
I don't like his films. Yeah.
He's got a new film coming out for Netflix called Rebel Moon. Sorry, 2 films, Rebel Moon Part 1 and Rebel Moon Part 2. And it's an original film that began as a rejected Star Wars pitch.
Okay.
That Disney said no to.
Okay.
Anyway, there are lightsabers in this one, so...
Wow, okay.
Copyrights lightsabers.
He's like, I want to still make it, but it can't be Star Wars. Okay, do you think maybe you should change? I'm not changing anything, no. Not even maybe taking out the lightsabers. They're sort of...
Yeah.
They're laser swords.
My favorite writer, Ayn Rand, she never took any advice from editors.
And her books are great. Full of lightsabers as well.
Yeah.
Have you read it? Have you read her work?
No, actually, no, I haven't. But I have played BioShock, so...
Same thing. Well, I think that's it. I think that's the episode. I think we effectively covered it.
That was like 35 minutes of extra material when we said we were going to wrap it up. We got distracted. But I think it was probably where the best content was.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right, who's doing the outro? Let's get this over and done with.
Jesus.
All right, got to get back into character. Thanks for listening to this episode of In the Skies of Love. We hope you enjoyed our discussion of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, episodes 14 and 15. If you have any comments or questions, please reach out to us at intheskiesoflove@gmail.com. We're also on Patreon, where you can sign up for bonus material eventually. You can find Kamel on the internet at Hi Kamel on Twitter or X, and you can't find Tom or Joel anywhere. Tune in next time for our review of episodes 16 and 17. Until then, we'll see you in the skies of love.